my name's Tom, and in this video I'm going to show you the ding dong delay. So this is a delay I put together just for use in Reaper using Reaper's scripting language EL2. But before I give you a run through and show you how it's put together, I should say that I don't really know what I'm doing. So I'm not an audio programmer or anything. I just had a couple of days off work, so I started messing about with it and seeing what was possible. And also, so there might well be some better ways of doing it. In fact, I know there are some more complicated ways of doing it, but I tried to keep it the scripting underneath as simple as possible to do what it does, just so I can use it more as an example of what is possible, just to get people up and running and give them an idea where to start. And then if they're interested, they can take it further themselves. So I'll give them some ideas of some other things they might want to try as well. So if you haven't really tried out the Jesusonic plugins or JSFX or messed about with scripting at all in Reaper, then before going to this, you'd probably be better off if you go to the homepage, my YouTube channel. Then under Reaper, I've got some videos. So a good one just to familiarise yourself with this kind of things that some people have done with Jesusonic plugins. Have a look at this one, top 5 free JSFX Jesusonic plugins, and that will show you a whole load of free plugins you can get, and there's some really good ones. And it will show you how to install them and set it up and get it working and give you a bit of background information on it. And if you haven't done any scripting yet, before doing that, I would just familiarise yourself with some of the tools which you can already use within Reaper to get different plugins to talk to each other and interact with each other. So have a look at that video. It's only 2 minutes 15 seconds. And then I did do a very brief intro one for making a Jesusonic JSFX plugin. So I gave an idea of how you can use an interface on it, how you get going, and at the end I just give a quick instructional video on how to make what is basically just a volume knob plugin. But it shows you how you can go from using what would be just like a generic interface, which is what you generally get with the JS plugins like this, and then you can change them into something like this, which is one I did. So for this, I basically just ripped off the code from Yossifier Chorus, which is included within Reaper, and then just did a fancier interface using a Geraint Luff's GUI. So this was downloaded from his GitHub site, and he's got a little instructional video on it. So you can change the different sliders, dials, buttons, and basically make it look a lot nicer. It's a bit of a pain to get it all going and a bit of a faff, and there's some things which don't work perfectly, which I'll show you some things to look out for when I get into it. And then what I did, my starting point for this delay, I wanted to have a really simple one, is it came from Salty here, who put a post on the Cocos forum, which is a good place to get information, and use this as a starting point. And then he gives an explanation, which will probably be better than what I'm going to give. I'll probably just get in a muddle trying to explain it to you. It's all written out, so it breaks it down here. But the only thing is that this doesn't entirely match what's in here, because he's changed some of the bits on people's suggestions down in the forum of better ways to do it. So that's something to be aware of. So, okay, what I'll do is I'll play you a little bit without just some plain vanilla guitar, and then I'll put on the ding dong delay, and then one of the things I've done to modify it is that I've done it, instead of just all coming out the same left and right channel, is if I click this on, it will change it so it's different on the left and right channel, and it'll have a a proportional but slightly different delay coming out of one channel to the other. And then if I put this, it brings in another delay again. It's a circular delay. So you have the main delay, and then you have 1.5 times that delay length coming out a different channel. And then you have, I can't remember if it's 2 or 3 times that length coming out again after that when you put it into circular, which gives it a different, some slightly more complex feel. Okay, I'll just play a bit without it, and then I'll play it with. Okay, so now with the ding dong delay on the default settings. Okay, so it's not exactly Echo Boy, but it's a start, and I've deliberately kept it as simple as possible, and I'll put a link to a shared Dropbox folder so you can just try it out yourself. So what I'll do now is I'm just going to attempt to give you a bit of an explanation of the script. So with any of the plugins on here, if you want to see how they're working or get an idea, all you have to do is go to them and just click edit, and then it'll pop up in a scripting window like this. I'll move this up here so you can just see. So the scripting is shown down here. It's just one page, and then down here you can see the debug window. So if you create any variables, you can see them changing in here and see the details. So if you're not quite sure what's going on, this can help. But it's not brilliant for debugging if you're just using EL2. It looks a lot better if you use Lua or use Python, but you can only use those for the scripting and not for the JSFX plugins as far as I know. I did have a look to see if it was possible to maybe call Lua or Python scripts from within the EL2 within a JSFX plugin, but I'm not sure if you can do that or not yet. So if anybody knows more than me and they've managed to do that, yeah, it'd be helpful if you put something in the comments. Okay, so going through this, to start with, is just the description. So that is what would show up along here. And that's just what shows up when you're searching for it. But I've overridden on that, to give a nicer label. So instead I'm using this, so I'm using the Great Loves GUI, so it looks a bit nicer. And the sliders on here are what's actually using it to control it, even though you're using the dials connect to the sliders, and then the sliders change the values. So I've got a minus in front of these. So if you take the minus off, then you'll see the sliders on the top. But I don't want to do that. And I'm also using aliases to make it easier to read. Otherwise, if you had a lot of sliders, a lot of controls, it would be difficult to remember which is slider 1 or which is slider 7 or what exactly they're doing. So it's better to give them a name, and then you can see what value is coming from there. So the first value would be the default value, which will be what it's on when it opens up. And then this will be the starting point and the range going through on here. So yeah, you can see I've actually messed about with these a bit, but the starting point would be 400 or 4. Actually, that's a -4, yeah. And 20, which is just a reasonable starting point. And then the next line here, this, if you want to have like the nice GUI and stuff, this is importing a Great Loves file with all the images you need to connect up to. So you bring that into the code here. So you need to import that in. So you need to remember to go to the link I'll put below and get a copy of this file and copy it into the same folder as whatever this has been. So you can see where the folder is on here where you open it up, where it saves it to. So wherever you save it to, you need to save this file into there as well. And then you have different stages I'll go through, which you'll see in all of the scripts. So you have the init, which will be the initialization, where you do the basic setup. Then you do the @slider, and this is where you pick up the values when you change any of the things on the controls, which would be the slider. So the slider, remember, it could be actual button or a switch, but as far as this is concerned, it's a slider. So even if it's just an on-off button, it would still be considered a slider. And then the sample bit at the end is where you send out the sound to the left speaker or right speaker. So the SPL0 would be the left speaker, SPL1 would be the right speaker. So I'll go back on these and do it. So one of the things I mentioned which can trip you up a bit is when I first tried doing this one, I tried changing this and then putting a nicer interface on it, as it wouldn't work properly until I duplicated part of what was under the slider under @block. So you shouldn't have to do that theoretically, but it wouldn't work until I do that. So I only figured out that by looking at the Cocos forum, and somebody, it's actually Grant Love himself, said, oh, why don't you try that, because somebody else is having a problem, and then it worked. So I don't really understand why you have to do that, but that did seem to fix the bug. So okay, so you've got these different sections here. Oh, I forgot to mention the @GFX. It's another one. That isn't in, you won't see that in the standard one, because this is coming particularly from Geraint Luff's GUI. And so these values here just set the size it will be when you initially start it. So after you initialize, you just do, again, this is setting up the GUI. And then you're setting memory location. You're setting a memory spaces to be using. So most of these, if you look at them, they're using S rate, which will be the sample rate. It's actually used here to decide it. But here, I just copied what they had done in the example, the salty one. So he just hard coded a dedicated space. And then these are the values which I added in myself to it. I changed. So I'm just setting default values to start with. So later on, you'll see on the delay, it's multiplying it by these values here, but it's a default. Unless you click on these buttons here, it's just going to be as 1. So it's multiplying it by 1. So it's not, effectively, it's not doing anything. And it'll be off, and it'll change these to on and off. So in the initialization, you also use the functions. So if you've done any coding before, functions bits, you can put things into functions you're going to be using again or using multiple times. So it saves, you don't want to be writing it out every single time. So you put the functions at the top. I'll come back to these in a bit. And then on here, this is the bit which does the layout here. So you start the UI, ding dong delay is this bit here, and then you're splitting it up into 4 parts. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then on the last 4th part, you're doing top ratio. So you're splitting that into 2 going down, and you're using the control button. So this is the, remember the alias, these bits here, the feedback rate. So these are connecting to here, and the labels. And then this goes back to function, the labels. So this bit I just copied and pasted in from for other delays. Great Love one's done, and then this will change the values on here when you move the buttons up and down. So the bits I added in, I added some buttons here, and then this is sort of like a lambda expression. So what it's saying is that if it equaled, when you click on it, if it's 1, then you change it to 1.5. If it's not, then you if it's already 1.5, when you set it to 1, and then the same with off, on and on. And then for here, it's for 2. So remember to set the default values at the top here. So then it will change them. And then if you click on it again, it will change them back. So when you change the slider, which will actually be the buttons which changes the slider, which are hidden with the minus in front. And what you do is it goes to the delay set function up here. So the delay set takes in buffer for memory location, the length of time for the delay, and have a gain on it, feedback gain from here. And it creates an instance for each sample. So all the time you've got an input coming in, it will be taking a sample, which is like a snapshot, taking the information that's coming in. And then when you want to do a delay, what you do is you put it, what it does is it goes on to here after that with that information. And then in the simplest terms I can put it, what you do is you hold on, you put the initial information to memory delay, and then you repeat that on there until the time for the memory has run out. So you keep adding on that bit, but reducing it by the feedback gain, so that it will keep getting quieter until it disappears for the length of the time of the delay. So I'm not sure how clear that is, but if you look through the guide on it, maybe it'll be a bit clearer. So then what I've changed on this is you can see the initial bit on the slider is it takes in the delay and it takes in the feedback delay, takes in the buffer, and then I've put the offset so it will change it when you click on it. So by default it's just 1, remember, but otherwise it will add it. And then things like to get the ratio, it's a function for that which calls into this as well, is you just have to know what to multiply it by that. But some of these things are just going to be standard things where once you've seen it done once, you can pretty much just copy it and apply it. And a lot of the basic functions are going to be the same. They're going to be, if you have a look through the code for different things like chorus, flanging, modulation, echo, they're basically maths. But you can use those same library of, I'm not sure what you would call them, but I suppose they're algorithms again. And then, so the simple ones, there's going to be certain standard ones you get. So as to say, get the size, size is always going to be the sample rate, time of milliseconds you put in, times 0.001. So a lot of these things are going to be, although it looks quite complicated to start with, a lot of these things are just going to be standard. And then it's going to be on the actions of when you change the slider and when you do the actual work to bring it out that you can actually start to get creative and start to do different things with the sound. Okay, so I'm not sure how well I've explained that really, but the best thing to do with any of these is to just go to any of them and click on edit, bring them up, start having a look through the code. You'll start to recognize some things from what I say. So you'll see it's broken up in sections slider. You have the at section, you have the at sample, you have the at initialize on all of them. And then if you're not sure what some things are doing, you can start commenting them out. So to comment it out, if you want to comment something out, just put 2 lines like that. It will change color and then it won't include it. So it'll probably start working as it wants, but that will give you an idea of what's needed. And so you can start doing things like that, and then you can start going in and you can start editing the default values yourself. And then you could start messing about with when you actually set the stuff onto the slider. You could start putting in different values. You could start adding different ones in. So I mean, some of the things you could do on a basic delay like this, all I've done is done a simple like offset. So I've basically split it so it's, if you click on the button, you get different things coming out the left channel to the right channel in different combinations. But a stage on from that, with some of the examples I gave before, would be you could start to modulate what's coming out. So as well as having the feedback, so it decays when it comes back, you could start to slightly change the pitch, or you could start using filters. So you start changing the general sound, or you can start getting into more complicated things where when you change one sound, it then starts to change another sound in another way after so many repeats. And you can get into all sorts of combinations of what I suppose you would call algorithms to start creating new and different songs. And I suppose, just like with playing a musical instrument, I suppose you've just got to play with it, mess about with it, try things. You'll inevitably come across some frustrating parts where you just don't know what's going on and why it's not working. If you do get stuck and you really want to do it, go on the forums and ask people. So having messed about it a bit, I do find the debugging quite frustrating, and there's better ways of doing it. So what I was thinking, if I've got a bit more time, what I might do next is actually have a look at using C++ with Juice, Juce, which is the main library for C++, which you would use to create VSTs. But when you do those VSTs, you can't just look at the script underneath because it'll be compiled code, but that does mean that you can use it on any other DAW. So this you can only use on Reaper. But if you start going into C++ and Juice, then you could create commercial plugins which could be sold because people can't copy it. And there are a lot more tutorials on that which go into a lot more depth, and they give quite a lot of examples. So but this would be a good place to start if you just want to start messing about with it and see if it's something you want to get into. Something else, if people are interested, I was thinking of doing as well, as I was thinking of having creating maybe a sample-based instrument. So I've got the full version of Contact, which you would need to do that. There's a free version, but that's just a player, so you couldn't create your own instrument in that. But there are also some free samplers, so I could adapt it to work in that. So if people are interested in my sort of experiments with those sorts of things, then let me know as well in the comments, and I can maybe have a go at something like that when I get around to it. So hopefully I haven't confused you too much, and I have at least given you some ideas of how to go about it. So you will need to go in and play about yourself to do within it and just try stuff out. But hopefully some of the links I gave in this and in the previous videos as well will give you at least a starting point to see if it's something that you would want to pursue further. So yeah, thanks for watching, and hopefully you can check out some of my other videos as well. Cheers.